Is America afraid? The terrifying military secrets of China poised to become the world's weapon king. China is rising from the ashes of its past, where humiliation and mistakes have been deeply buried in its heart. They have transformed these errors into invaluable lessons, learning from the strengths of their rivals to prepare silently for the past 40 years. The goal is to build a robust defense industry with a global reputation, marked by unprecedented highlights. With large-scale production capabilities and rapid modernization, the question arises, can they achieve dominance in the global defense industry, replacing the United States and Russia as many predict? Although they have only recently emerged, in reality, China began building its modern defense industry quite early, not much later than Japan. However, due to a series of unfortunate mistakes, they have experienced setbacks and had to start from scratch. You may not know that even during the late Qing dynasty, several famous generals like Zheng Guofeng and Li Hongzhang initiated the establishment of shipbuilding, metallurgy, and weapon manufacturing workshops based on techniques learned from the UK and Germany. Many Chinese students were also sent to the West to study military technology. However, the defense industry at that time was still limited to acquiring Western technology without a solid foundation. Many investments were wasted, corruption plagued the military, and instability in the workforce supplying the defense industry prevented China's military sector from meeting national needs. Many scientists at the time revered Western techniques without building a specific roadmap for developing an independent defense industry. This was in stark contrast to Japan's approach, which involved a mix of respectful learning of Western science and firm commitment to establishing its own weapons production capabilities. As a result, China's arms industry became increasingly outdated compared to its competitors. After enduring extensive losses due to civil war, in 1953, the Communist Party of China took power and set out to build a structured defense industry with support from the Soviet Union. On May 15, 1953, a Chinese government delegation led by Zhou Enlai signed an agreement with the Soviet government, which included 18 projects in the weapons industry, such as factories for tank production engines, anti-aircraft guns, naval weapons, and artillery. During this period, China's aviation industry also received foundational support from the Soviet Union. In 1956, numerous engine manufacturing plants began construction, including the Shenyang aircraft engine plant and other key facilities. The focus then shifted to auxiliary production facilities. In the second five-year plan, a series of defense factories were added in southwest and northwest China, in locations like Harbin, Nanjing, and Lanzhou. Foundational heavy industries, such as metallurgy, mining, and energy chemicals, also grew rapidly, providing essential support for the defense sector. From a modest starting point, under the Communist Party's leadership, China began to produce basic ground forces weapons, warships, and even initial advancements in aviation, a feat that most Southeast Asian, Central Asian, and African nations have not yet achieved. However, these early achievements led to overconfidence among communist leaders, and the Great Leap Forward policy resulted in a stagnation of China's defense industry between 1960 and 1970. Under the influence of the Cultural Revolution, political cadres, accustomed to qualitative approaches, pushed plans toward rapid and reckless changes. As a result, no real goals were achieved, and factory operations fell into disarray. Conventional weapons that China can produce, such as tanks, artillery, and fighter jets, gradually became outdated. The only bright spot for this East Asian nation was that the basic foundations built in the 1950s remained intact. Nuclear weapon manufacturing technology was completed by the late 1970s, led by a new generation of leadership under Deng Xiaoping. A series of reforms were implemented, and reflecting on past mistakes, China's new leadership understood that clinging to ideology or boasting about past achievements would not benefit the nation. A series of reforms were implemented, and reflecting on past mistakes, China's new leadership understood that clinging to ideology or boasting about past achievements would not benefit the nation. Education and training also received attention, focusing on quality and practicality. Their technical expertise in defense now approaches that of the United States and Russia, the world's leading superpowers. Beijing's modernization pace shows no signs of slowing down. At this point, you might think that these claims are exaggerated and that China's defense industry merely crudely copies existing technology without producing anything truly superior to rival top military powers. However, on the screen in front of us is the DF-41 intercontinental missile, currently regarded as one of the most dangerous ICBMs in the world. Thanks to its high speed, 25 times the speed of sound, it outclasses many rivals. The DF-41's only drawback compared to Russia's equivalent is its lower warhead capacity. But even with 8 independent MIRV nuclear warheads, it is capable of devastating an area the size of a U.S. state. China's short to medium-range missiles, such as the DF-11 and DF-15, are also regarded for their impressive specifications, built with special techniques rarely seen elsewhere in the world. Notably, between 1988 and 2019, while the US and Russia were bound by the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces INF Treaty, China took the opportunity to become a leading power in this field. Its iconic medium-range ballistic missile, the DF-1, can serve both tactical and strategic purposes. It is considered a top threat to the US carrier fleet, capable of carrying 5 nuclear warheads to targets at a range of up to 1,700 kilometers at maximum speed. Although the United States is a comprehensive nuclear power, it is currently lagging behind China in research and development of hypersonic weapons, not only in the realm of strategic weapons, but also in conventional weapon production. Regarding China's strategy of copying, it stems from the goal of rapid and cost-effective development in the defense industry. This is, in fact, a well-organized strategy based on experiences from many countries throughout history, rather than merely buying a prototype and dismantling it for copying, as many people mistakenly believe. Chinese leaders are deeply aware of the collapse of past dynasties when a poorly equipped and outdated army could not withstand smaller nations with more advanced technology. They frequently recall past humiliations, such as the Opium Wars, to remind themselves of the dangers posed by being left behind. To avoid falling behind, one must first achieve a level close to that of the most advanced industrialized countries. And the best way to do that is to copy the best of the adversary. China has a strong industrial foundation, coupled with a large pool of skilled workers, engineers, and scientists. Domestically, they also have a community of overseas Chinese and students in almost every developed country. It's noteworthy that Deng Xiaoping, the father of China's atomic bomb, was also an overseas student and received his doctorate in the United States. After successfully copying weapon prototypes from abroad, China has leveraged its massive production scale to create larger quantities of products at lower costs. This is also China's advantage in initially penetrating the international arms market, gradually competing with the US and Russia. However, this is just the surface of the story. The reality is much more complex. Competing with and surpassing the two biggest names in international arms production today is no easy task. To do this, not only do they need plans laid out on paper, but China also must apply unusual measures in some African countries, such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Here, China is believed to have facilitated government corruption, leading to increased conflicts between mining operators and residents in the areas where they operate. In return, China would receive contracts to provide military training services and exploit resources. In 2020, after receiving $1 billion from the US, Nigerian officials used 1/3 of that money to sign contracts with state defense companies from Russia and China. The country's inspection agency investigated and reported that these contracts seemed designed to allow officials and brokers to siphon money from the government. With a strategy of low-cost, large-volume sales, by 2023, China had surpassed Germany to become the 4th largest arms exporter in the world. Regular customers of Chinese weapons include Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and several African nations. In addition to increasing production capacity, technological advancement, and financial strength, China is also seizing the opportunity while both the United States and Russia face their own issues to rise. Throughout the mid-19th and 20th centuries, the U.S. rose due to conditions allowing development amidst European empires having to disperse resources to maintain their dominance in colonies and engage in large-scale global wars. Today, China's conditions are similar. The U.S. is busy with conflicts in the Middle East and reallocating resources to support allies like NATO countries in Europe or Japan and South Korea. After 20 years of recovery and power accumulation, Russia is also engaged in the conflict with Ukraine. More importantly, China's manufacturing has allowed it to create ties with most countries around the world through the provision of large-scale components and equipment. Just a few years ago, it was known that China was Russia's largest arms importing customer. Today, it is also known that Moscow has become dependent on imported components from Beijing to produce weapons. In the conflict in Ukraine, China has been criticized by the U.S. for supplying semiconductors and semi-electronic components to Russia. In 2023, about 90% of Russia's electronic components came from China, used for manufacturing missiles, tanks, and aircraft. Nearly 70% of the approximately $900 million worth of imported tools by Russia in 2023 also came from China. Will this help China to win against Russia and subsequently the U.S. in the race for dominance in the global arms market? Please leave your answers in the comments below. For now, goodbye and see you in the next videos. Wishing everyone a peaceful day.